Welcome to Withdraw Consent. I'm Jack. Today I want to talk about the assassination of the Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran that happened recently, right? And I'm going to give you a little bit different perspective than you're used to, and at the end it's going to kind of be rough, just a rough sell to you if you're not previously conditioned to critical thinking, we'll say. Okay, so basically, we covered in yesterday's episode about the soccer field that they bombed, that was bombed, and then it's unsure who. And so Israel's now going to do a retaliatory attack. Now, when they go to do the retaliatory attack, we're gonna look into this, but we're gonna find out after October 7th that Israel had vowed to assassinate all Hamas leaders, right? But the interesting part of this story is that this Hamas leader lives in Qatar, an accessible place, but he was assassinated by a bomb in Tehran, Iran, which is less accessible to, say, a Mossad agent, right? I mean, you could fly to Qatar, like, no problem, you know? And so it's interesting that the killing of the Hamas person, which is doesn't even make sense when you hear the details, is done also to instigate Iran. And so it's an intentional escalation, whereas just the killing of him in Qatar would not escalate with Iran. So let's look into who this guy was, because this is very interesting, right? His name is Ismail Haniyeh, whatever. So he was in the first Intifada when he was young. He was in prison multiple times in the late 80s. He was the prime minister of Gaza in 2006. So 2006 is the year when Hamas was voted in. And he was the prime minister, right? And then remember, Israel then pulled back and then started the blockade and pulled their troops out. And so all the problem has been since 2006 with Hamas. So he was dismissed by the president of, I forget if it was a PLO, PLA or something like that, in 2007, right? But he disregarded that order and remained in power until 2017. So the reason why you have the current split between the Palestinian Authority and the West Bank and Hamas in Gaza Strip is because this guy refused to be dismissed in 2007. So he was prime minister of Gaza 2016 to 2017. And you could say, well, maybe he's a terrible person. I don't know. But if you look him up on Wikipedia, it literally says this sentence: he was one of the more pragmatic and moderate figures in Hamas. Okay, pretty interesting, right? He lived in Qatar from 2017 to 2024. And on 6 May 2017, so it was the same year he stepped down as prime minister, he was elected to chairman of Hamas's political bureau. So basically, he's not in Gaza anymore. And from 2017 until his death, he's in charge of the political bureau. Now, anybody who has a small amount of information about Hamas knows that the military wing in Gaza is not very well connected with the political wing outside of Gaza. They do what they want, the military wing does, right? So basically, then it says, under his tenure, Hamas launched a 2023 Hamas-led attack on Israel, and subsequently, Israel declared its intention to assassinate all Hamas leaders, like I said, right? But under his tenure, Hamas launched a 2023, October 7th, right? But he's in the political bureau, and we know they're detached from the military, the militants in Hamas in Gaza. So that's a nonsense statement, right? So in May 2024, Karim Khan, the prosecutor of the ICC, announced his intention to apply for an arrest warrant for Haniyeh and other Hamas leaders for war crimes and crimes against humanity as part of the ICC investigation in Palestine. We remember this, the indictment of Netanyahu as well as Hamas leaders. Okay, fine. On 31st July 2024, Haniyeh was assassinated by an explosive device planted in his guest house in Tehran, likely by Israeli Mossad agents. What it looks like is that Israeli Mossad agents paid or convinced people in the closest guard in Iran, in the highest level, to plant these bombs in his room up to weeks in advance underneath his bed, right? And when I was sitting here contemplating what this means, I was thinking, okay, you're in this guard, the Revolutionary Guard in Iran, and you hate the Jews, and a Mossad agent comes up to you and says, you need to help Israel, right? You need to plant this bomb to kill this Hamas guy. What could they offer you? What are they? $1 million? $100 million? You're through. Are they going to swoop your family out and do that? So what I'm guessing here is that Mossad agent said, hey, we have your wife and kids, They're in some torture room somewhere, and you do this, we'll let them go. You're through either way, but we'll let them go. I'm just going to guess. This is all just speculation, but like, what else could they have been offered? Because then a couple dozen people get arrested, and I'll bet you terrible things are happening to them in Iran for treason. Oh, but terrible things that I would like to do to people in the U.S. who betray our country. You know what I'm saying? So what could you do to get them to do that? Pretty interesting, I think, right? But this is interesting too. At the time of his death, he had been leading ceasefire negotiations with Israel for Hamas. So remember, what did it say? It said he was one of the more pragmatic and moderate figures in Hamas. Now he's in the political bureau, and he's leading ceasefire negotiations with Israel for Hamas, and they assassinate him. So this reminds me of another story, right? I'm just going to do it off the top of my head because I didn't plan to do this for this, but basically in Fallujah, there was an extreme Palestinian leader who then decided to become moderate. And he said, we need to work with Israel for a peaceful solution to the end of this, right? That's not in Israel's playbook. They need you to be extreme because how are they going to achieve greater Israel? If you're not being extreme, if you're going to come talk at the table. So they send the Mossad into Fallujah. They assassinate the now moderate Palestinian leader, right? So the locals in Fallujah are furious. They then murder the U.S. military contractors who were there. They hang them on the bridge. Like you could literally Google this and see pictures of hanging on the bridge. They get a car. They put a picture of the dead leader in the front of the car, and then they strap one of the U.S. contractors to the front and drive it across the bridge with all the American bodies on the side. And then we said, oh, we're not taking this. We're going into Fallujah door to door, you know? And then a bunch of our boys died and stuff like that. Because the point is that Israel can't allow moderates. And the same thing goes back to the episode we did on Yitzhak Rabin. He had to be assassinated because he became the peace prime minister. He had been terrible before in the Haganah and stuff like that. But he had to be assassinated because he was a moderate and he was doing a peace rally. He was assassinated at the end of a peace rally by an extremist. You know, we covered that. I'll put the link in the description below if you haven't seen it. It's a little bit older. And so this falls in line with that same scenario where Israel can't allow moderate Palestinians, so they have to assassinate them. And they're okay with the more extreme militant Hamas members because it's going to get them their end goal, which is getting rid of the Palestinians and colonizing Gaza and getting rid of West Bank and then getting rid of Jordan. You know, like it's greater Israel. We did an episode about that. I'll put in the description below if you haven't seen it. Now, another interesting part of the story is that from an American perspective, why do we care about this dude? We don't. But they claim that he was responsible for the planning of the Beirut bombing, right? So basically it was in the 80s or 90s, I forget. And they had an operation going on. Israel had an operation going. It was like Operation Peace of Galilee, right? And so we sent in these forces. I'm sorry to laugh, but we sent in these forces, and this U.S. and French, and they're living in a barracks in Lebanon, you know, and it's probably for something really altruistic on Israel's part. You know, it probably wasn't genocide or anything like that. And we got troops on the ground in Beirut. Like, just imagine how insane that sounds, right? And so, oh, by the way, when I looked this up, I cannot find any link to this guy, this Ismail Haniyeh, and the Beirut bombing. And he would have been like 21 or 22 at the time, and they say he was planning it. Maybe, maybe not. But I'm just saying, like, this is because of this bombing, 241 American soldiers died, along with a bunch of French soldiers and stuff, you know? And when Americans hear that, they're like, we're glad this dude's dead. Okay, well, let me give you an alternate view of that. I don't like that those soldiers are dead. I'm an American. I just don't like when Americans die. I don't like that the French died, honestly. Those are my people too. So basically, you have a foreign military base inside of Beirut, Lebanon, and some Lebanese people come and they blow up your barracks. And then people say, well, this guy, obviously he's a terrorist. No, that's not terrorism. Terrorism is walking into a cafe and blowing yourself up. You're trying to, you have no objective. It's just to create terror. You're attacking there's an enemy barracks with military soldiers in your capital, in your country, on your ground. And you're from this country, Hezbollah, Lebanon, remember? And you blow up the barracks. Now, this is an unpopular view. in the United States, because 241 soldiers, that's a lot of American soldiers to die. That's a lot in one thing. And it's ridiculous that this guy's called a terrorist, because we had a base in this country. Like, it's insanity. You know, he's not a terrorist. He was targeting a military target. So if there was a military base in my country, I would be targeting it as well. Like, this is not rocket science. You know, me and the militia group up on the hill right there nearby, we would be targeting the military base, of course. They would call us terrorists, you know, and only people who don't do critical thinking would agree. So I don't like that the U.S. soldiers died, and I don't like that the French died, but they definitely shouldn't have been there. And so I don't know if this guy was related to it. They're making that claim, and I literally searched and I can't find it. But the problem is, with the new AI, the search is so terrible now on any platform, because it's just trying to think for you. And if it can't capture the idea that you're trying to portray, even with all your quotes and modifying the search, and it's just stubbornly wrong, it tries to think for you, and it gives you all more new stuff, we'll say, you know? And back in the day before the AI, even if it didn't understand what you were going for, based on your keywords, if you just scroll down within the first page, you would eventually find what you're looking for, because it wasn't trying to think for you. Anyways, so I think it's interesting. I think any understanding of Israel and them accelerating into a larger war has to be understood that they don't want a moderate path, you know? It's funny, because even in Israel, they took a poll, and Israeli citizens are more gung-ho to invade Lebanon than the Israeli government is, which is pretty interesting, because the Israeli government's really extreme. And, you know, I covered the guy in the Greater Israel episode, where he goes up to a speech and he's got a picture of Greater Israel, having Israel control surrounding countries as annexed. That's a pretty bold move, but the people are even more gung-ho than them. Anyways, I'm interested in hearing your opinion on it. See if you're interested. Obviously, we shouldn't be allies with the country that acts in the worst way imaginable. And that's what I got for you. Hope to see you next time.